Part 48. The Emperor is becoming more and more humane now. Slow down, wait for the slave. Ming Ruo shouted from behind, panting and following Xu Ruo Lan into the house. Seeing the master enter the inner room, before she could follow up, she heard two clangs, like the sound of something hitting the ground. Mother's anger. Ming Ruo hurriedly entered, and saw that Xu Ruo Lan's complexion, which had been gloomy since she left Sinning Palace, finally broke out completely, and she didn't stop after dropping 2 teapots. And finally smashed the vase and teacups on the Kong table. She gritted her teeth and said angrily, "Let me be angry? How do I calm my anger? That fox not only let the Emperor hold him in the palm of his hand, but now even the Queen Mother has let him take it. I really don't understand, where did he get such a big ability? The last time the Queen Mother called him and beat him, why did he go to the cold palace, and even the Queen Mother took pity on him? Hateful, hateful. If he was still in the harem for a day, wouldn't all of us have no way to live? Hateful." Ming Ruo has nothing to say, and she doesn't understand how things can turn out like this. That concubine Wen, what kind of magic is there? Looks like a handsome scholar, but why do the Emperor and the Queen Mother like him so much? Even His Royal Highness Crown Prince, who has always been unapologetic to the concubines, showed a rare concern for him. Don't blame Mother for being angry, although that person is not a queen, but now he is the master of the harem. Xu Ruo Lan is not an ordinary woman after all. And after the anger in her heart is vented, she will be calm. After pacing on the ground for a few circles, she suddenly stood still and said in a deep voice, "When was last year's spring hunting?" Ming Ruo was stunned for a moment, and then hurriedly said, "Back to Mother, there was no spring hunting last year. And the year before last was on the 6th day of the 4th month. Yes, I made the hunting costume the year before last. But now that hunting suit has probably been thrown away by the Emperor." Xu Ruo Lan smiled bitterly, then swept her hair, and said softly, "You find a proper person, go to the house and say something. And let this mother hand over the sign to the palace in the next 2 days. Mother." Ming Ruo's voice trembled, and she took a few steps forward and whispered, "Mother, you must not act rashly at this time. Mother, concubine Yan is a lesson from the past. It is precisely because concubine Yan is dead that I have to take advantage of this rare opportunity for the Emperor to relax." Xu Ruo Lan gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, with a hint of resentment in her eyes, "But Mother, this is too dangerous after all, so let's find someone to make a knife and test the Emperor's reaction first. It's just someone else. Noble Wei, probably the most afraid of concubine Wen's return. She wants to protect the second prince, and she is willing to do anything, right?" Xu Ruo Lan shook her head and said softly, "Don't you understand? The Emperor can't stand the temptation anymore. If you can't hit it with one blow, the Emperor will be furious, and I'm afraid that the entire harem will be implicated. I will bear the same wrath. It's better to make a move at this time. Maybe you can also get the effect of a surprise soldier, once and for all." Ming Ruo's eyes were full of shock, but she couldn't say words to dissuade her. Xu Ruo Lan looked at this palace maid who had been with her for 8 years, suddenly sighed, and said in a deep voice, "The way of the harem. There is no peaceful coexistence. The Emperor is evenly wet, and everyone has a stake in it, and perhaps this balance can be maintained. Once a person has the Emperor's favor, then he is the target of the public, and he can no longer talk about peace. Whether it is harming others or being killed, it is all forced to this point. Anyway, in the current situation, Pu Qiutai and I have long been incompatible. Either he dies or I live." Ming Ruo wanted to say that concubine Wen was not this kind of person at all. However, she knew that it was useless to say it. The master had always been arrogant, and she would never tolerate a male concubine riding on her head, not to mention that if Pu Qiutai was in charge of the 6 palaces, with her own mother's always vicious nature, she would inevitably have a conflict with that compassionate man. Ming Ruo is worthy of being Shu Ruo Lan's confidant palace maid. And she sees her master very thoroughly. Shu Ruo Lan thinks so in her heart. As for the family, if she lost power in the palace, her family would have declined. If she can succeed, then the entire Shu family can develop and grow with the help of her strength, so it seems that this risk is worth taking. Now think about it. Although the queen is dead, in exchange for the emperor's memory of her, in exchange for the Pan family's eternal imperial grace, in fact, she is really worth her death. Shu Ruo Lan sighed faintly, thinking of the elegant and calm woman, thinking of concubine Yan's flower and moon appearance. Now they have all turned into Lois. They are under the 9 springs, but they are also waiting for themselves? As soon as I thought of this, I suddenly couldn't help but feel a little frightened. And secretly said that I was really confused. Isn't it a bad omen to think about them at this time? She shook her head in a hurry and drove the 2 faces out of her mind. What time is it? Sitting in the outer room of the Yunhai Palace, the book in Xia Linxuan's hand didn't turn the pages for a long time, and in the end, this guy finally couldn't help it. Threw the book on the table, raised his eyes and asked Farong. It's not the end of the time to go back to the emperor. Farong knew what the master was anxious about. And she was angry and funny in her heart, seeing Xia Linxuan pacing on the ground in vain like a tiger in a cage. She replied softly, Your Majesty, Mother has been away from home for a long time. And he hasn't seen his family for more than a year, and now when he goes back, he naturally wants to talk about his feelings after parting. Before she finished speaking, she saw Xia Linxuan stop suddenly, gritted his teeth and said, Talk about the feelings after parting? When do you have to go? He's comfortable, but I'm dying. Farong, you say, is Qiutai pampered and arrogant? The other concubines are all family members handing signs to see, and then they can enter the palace. He is good, he has to go home. Has this been an old precedent in the previous dynasty? The dignified concubine, why do you pay attention to going back to his parents' house? How can there be such a thing? Farong rolled her eyes at the sky and said softly, Since there is no such example, how can the emperor still approve it? If you don't give permission, he won't be able to go back. I'm not. That's not considering that Qiutai hasn't seen his family for a long time. He was forced to enter the palace again. So trying to make amends and please him? Who knows him? He didn't think of my extra kindness, but he delayed until this time. Where did he put me? I think he's overjoyed, seeing him come back. How I want to punish him, it's really against the sky. If I don't punish the ban, he will climb on my head. Farong looked at His Majesty Emperor in embarrassment, and muttered in a low voice, Yes. Is it so serious? The emperor is too alarmist, right? What alarmism? Let me tell you, Qiutai is this kind of person. If he doesn't quickly snuff out his mind in the cradle, he will probably not return to the palace in the future if he is allowed to stay in Pu's house to soak mushrooms. His Majesty Emperor swore an oath before the words fell. I heard the cool voice outside. Mother concubine Wen returns to the palace. Farong saw the figure of His Majesty Emperor, who had always been majestic, flickered and disappeared outside the main hall. She couldn't help but sweep her bangs, and muttered, The Emperor's light skills have improved again, and he is almost catching up with lightning. As she spoke, she hurriedly walked out of the door to greet Pu Qiutai. My beloved concubine, how is my father-in-law and mother-in-law? His Majesty Emperor, who greeted the door, saw Pu Qiutai smiling. obviously in a good mood after a trip home, so his face smiled like a flower, took Pu Qiutai's hand, and began to ask questions without waiting to enter the house. Who is your bastard's father-in-law? The corners of Pu Qiutai's mouth twitched twice, scolded viciously in his heart, restrained a smile on his face, and said lightly, "It's okay. By the way, the Emperor, Shanyan and Mingfang are really attached to their parents, and when the minister went to pick them up, he saw them and the crown. It was inseparable from the Shenmingbo and his wife, and I couldn't bear it, so I wanted them to live in the Shenmingbo mansion for 2 days. So I specially asked the emperor for a decree." As he spoke, he carefully observed Xia Linxuan's complexion from the corner of his eye. In all fairness, this is a prelude to the first cut and then the prelude. Pu Qiutai himself doesn't know why, he just wants to test Xia Linxuan's attitude towards him. This bastard keeps saying that he loves himself to the bone, then he has to see how much the other party will tolerate him. This, my beloved concubine, is a bit of a prelude, right? Xia Linxuan squinted at his lover, but saw Pu Qiutai raise his chin slightly. His eyes waved, his eyes glanced over lightly, and said softly, "It's cut first and then played." What? Does the emperor want to condemn his ministers? It's just an ordinary sentence, without any sense of charm. However, Xia Linxuan, the ruthless emperor, was half of his body under this sentence, and placed Pu Qiutai on the opposite side of the Kong table and sat down. His Majesty Emperor smiled like an idiot, and said again and again, "It's okay, it's okay. Isn't it just cut first and then played? What's it? How could I condemn my concubine for such a trivial matter? Ha ha ha, my concubine. You really underestimate me." Pu Qiutai hated Xia Linxuan to the core, and when he saw the other party's infatuation at this time, he couldn't help but feel warm in his heart, and lowered his head slightly and smiled. "Then the minister will thank the emperor for not killing." Ha ha ha, what is the grace of not killing, my concubine? You are too serious. How can there be such a thing as killing or not killing between us? It's too late for me to like you. How can I be willing to punish you? Xia Linxuan could feel the gratitude in Pu Qiutai's words. And suddenly the other half of his body was also crispy. Suddenly, I heard a voice beside me say faintly, "The emperor was impatient just now. And it seems that you did say that if you don't punish mother again, mother will have to gain an inch." Nonsense, did I say such a thing? Furong, do you have a problem with your ears? Hurry up and find your cousin to show you. I don't need you to serve here, call Liulu in. Liulu is the most temperamental among the palace maids. And His Majesty Emperor is obviously angry because Furong has rebelled against his face, and is ready to change to an honest palace maid who will not dismantle his own stage. Pu Qiutai and Furong looked at each other and smiled. Furong was about to speak, when she saw Xia Dongming and Xia Dongqing running in, and saw Xia Linxuan and Pu Qiutai sitting opposite each other, and the two hurriedly bowed and greeted. Then Xia Dongming got up and said, "Father, when is this year's spring hunting arranged? Sun Minister's bow horse is already very skilled, you should take your son with you this year, right? Cut, how old are you? Riding a pony and pulling such a small bow. Dare you say that you are skilled in bow with horses?" Xia Linxuan sneered. Seeing that his son was injured, he remembered that he was the lord. How could he belittle his son in order to show heroism in front of his lover? So, he hurriedly coughed, and said, "The date of spring hunting field has been set, and it will be on March 26th. When you and Chinger will go with me. See what good things you can hunt for your mother concubine." Pu Qiutai frowned, and said softly, "Your Majesty, I won't go." Without waiting to finish speaking, he listened to Xia Linxuan say, "That's not good, Qiutai, you go to have a lively time. I heard that you have a lot of brothers in your family. Let them all go and join in the fun. I know that you are kind-hearted, and you must say that spring is the season for animals to reproduce, but you can rest assured, I have my own measure. Those pregnant female beasts will not hurt. There are many male beasts, so many, hunting dozens of them will not delay their reproduction. Although Pu Qiutai is kind, he is not a person who eats fasting and recites Buddha without moving meat, not to mention that when he is young and frivolous, he occasionally rides a horse and shoots hunting in high spirits. At this time, he listens to Xia Linxuan's chatter, and there is a posture of, I won't stop talking if you don't go. So he thought about it, then he nodded and agreed. Xia Linxuan didn't have much hope, but his lover agreed so easily, and couldn't help but be overjoyed, and immediately asked Farong and the others to get up, but he heard Pu Qiutai say angrily, "What is there to prepare? There are still more than 2 months to go until March 26th, so what's the hurry?" "I don't know about Qiutai, there are a lot of things to prepare. You have to make 2 sets of hunting suits, right? Also, you are a weak scholar, even if you are involved in horseback archery, you may not be proficient in it, so you must always practice, right? Of course, I don't expect you to practice any skills in 100 steps. With me here, can you still eat without your prey? But at the very least, you have to be able to keep up with me and watch me show my might." His Majesty Emperor accidentally confided in his heart, it turned out to be in front of his lover. Such a public peacock opened the screen to attract the female peacock. Behavior was naturally despised by Pu Qiutai, and finally sent the interested king to the imperial study to inspect the homework of Xia Dongming and Xia Dongqing's brothers. He breathed a sigh of relief and said to Farong, "Why is the emperor so verbose now? I remember he didn't talk much." Farong smiled. "It's not because of mother? The slave maid feels that the emperor is becoming more and more humane now." "Really?" Pu Qiutai was puzzled. "Do you think this is humane? An emperor, talking endlessly. Don't you think this damages the majesty of the emperor?" Farong shook her head and said, "Mother doesn't know the emperor in the past, to be honest. The slave maid has served by the emperor's side for so many years, and she can be regarded as a confidant in the past. It's just that I go to see the emperor every day. But I still have to be careful with everything. Although the emperor doesn't like to kill, and he rarely gets angry, but every day when he looks at him expressionlessly, can't help but make people dare not even breathe. Compared to the majestic king, the slave really likes the easygoing majesty now. Who says I don't know him back then?" Pu Qiutai snorted coldly. "How did I enter the palace, have you forgotten?" Farong thought for a moment, "Isn't it? The master was forced by the emperor to be cornered and had to enter the palace as a concubine. How could he not understand the temper of the former emperor? So," she smiled and asked, "Yes, the slave maid has forgotten this stubble, and the lady herself said before. Do you like the current emperor majesty, or do you like the former emperor majesty?" Pu Qiutai really thought about it seriously and muttered, "In the past, he was always aggressive. And I forced him to die several times. Although he is also very annoying now, and the pestering person is out of breath, but he is." Then before, without waiting for him to finish speaking, he suddenly came to his senses, gritted his teeth and said, "What kind of bastard problem is this? Wasn't it all him, then and now? I don't like it. I was forced to enter the palace as a concubine. How could I like the culprit who persecuted me? Yes, it's the slave who lost her words." Farong turned her head and smiled secretly. She secretly said, "Mother, you really haven't liked the emperor yet, but after a long time, one day, you will be influenced by his majesty, right? Compared to the majesty who persecuted you to the most miserable point. I don't believe that you can resist the tender offensive of this gentle majesty now, alas." In the end, you are still too soft-hearted to be iron-hearted, so what else is there to say? Mother, I have received the news that the day of the spring hunting is set for March 26th, and the crown prince and the second prince will also be with the emperor. Okay, I know.